Hello and welcome! Today let's take a look at the new Tier 9 premium battleship, the Jean Bart. And unfortunately, she is French. Why unfortunately? Because it means I cannot pronounce her name properly, despite the fact that I have asked multiple people to pronounce it for me. They did, which was very nice of them, but I have managed to forget. So at some point I guess I will have to bother them again so that I can forget yet again. This ship has caused quite a bit of controversy. Well, there's actually two types of controversy from what I saw. One being the fact that she's being sold in the premium shop as a Tier 9 battleship. And number two, because there is a $150 package for her. And I don't really understand either of these controversies. Because, well, she is sold in the premium store, but she's also available for coal. And I mean, do you guys not have coal? Bonus points to anybody that can understand this reference. I just don't get it, because she isn't a good ship, and in my opinion that means that she isn't going to upset the balance. Now you might go, hold on Aerroon, you know that it's not a good ship because you were able to try the ship, but what about everybody else? And I think everybody else should think the way I did before I ever got to even try the ship, and be like, hey, it's a Richelieu with reload booster. And then be like, wow, that's gonna suck. Because that's what I thought. Because I thought Richelieu, even at tier 8, wasn't any good. And now, that was a nice shot. And now, the Jean Bart is gonna be at tier 9, which makes the situation even worse. Because cruisers are going to be your worst nightmare. You're going to be a big, juicy piece of meat for any cruiser. Because you are 32mm all over, so anytime a cruiser looks at you wrong, you not only are you set on fire, you will also take a whole bunch of HE damage. But wait, there's more. You see, because you are a Richelieu, you have 380mm caliber guns. Now, what does this mean? You see, if you divide 380 by 14.3, you will arrive at 26.57, which is the amount of armor that your 380mm caliber shells are capable of overmatching. But it turns out that like half the cruisers at that tier, or these tiers, have more armor than that, which means that you are unable to overmatch like half the cruisers that you are going to face. So not only are you going to take a large amount of damage from them, you also can't really punish them, because what are you gonna do? Fire HE at them with your 8 guns? Really? It's just... You're just not going to do all that much. You might go, oh, but I have reload booster. Sure, that's gonna be useful when the cruiser shows you broadside, but if that's not the case, it's not that big of a deal. Especially since it only really gives you, actually it gives you less than 1 extra salvo. Now, actually let's explain that. So let's take a look at two different scenarios. In terms of time, one where you do use reload booster, by the way I slowed down so that the torpedoes will pass in front of me. This is called skill, okay? Actually, it should be fairly obvious to anybody that plays this game a little bit at least. So let's take a look at two different scenarios, right? Number one, let's consider where you don't use reload booster. So, at second 0, your guns are reloaded, so you get to fire your guns. You get 1 salvo. Now, let's imagine that there's a 20-second reload on these guns. This reload is actually longer than 20, but let's imagine for the this scenario, because it's easier to do the math. Now, at second 0, you get to fire your 1 salvo. 20 seconds go by, you get to fire a second salvo. And another 20 seconds go by, so you're at second 40. You get to fire another salvo, so you got to fire 3 salvos total. Now let's imagine a second scenario where you do use reload booster. So second 0, your guns are reloaded, you fire them, and you immediately use reload booster. 10 seconds go by, because what reload booster does is it halves your reload time. So instead of 20-second reload, you now have 10 seconds, and it lasts for 20 seconds. So at second 0, you fire your salvo. 10 seconds go by, you get to fire another salvo. Another 10 seconds go by, so you're at second 20, you get to fire another salvo, but then reload booster runs out, so another 20 seconds go by, you're at second 40, you get to fire another salvo. So you got to fire 4 salvos total. which means you only got one extra salvo out of that reload booster. And in fact, on this ship, you actually get less than one salvo, because the reload time on the ship is actually longer than 20 seconds. Now you might go, but you get to take advantage of certain situations, and sure, I suppose that's true. If you have set the fire on a ship, and they use damage control party, you might trigger your reload booster, and then you get to fire an extra salvo, so you have a much higher chance of causing a fire or even multiple fires on that ship. And yes, that's a good idea. But on the other hand, if you think, hey, a Yamato is showing you broadside at like 15 kilometers, and you get to take advantage of that, then unfortunately no, because this ship has basically something like Bismarck tiers of penetration because it's 380mm caliber guns, right? Now I don't know what the exact value is, but it wouldn't really surprise me if it was somewhere around that. And that unfortunately means you probably aren't able to penetrate the belt armor of a Yamato at 15 kilometers. Now if you get close, like a close pass or something like that, sure, that would work just fine. But is that worth it? That you are basically a tier 9 Richelieu? I don't know. I would say no, because even the Richelieu, to me, didn't feel good enough. But that might just be me playing wrong, because other community contributors, at least from what I saw, they seemed to like it. And it confused me, because when I tried it, she didn't perform well for me. And conceptually, I don't see her performing well in general, so I don't know. Wait, wasn't I supposed to be talking about the controversy? I guess I kinda got sidetracked. Well, I suppose now you know what I think about the ship's performance. So back to the controversy. I don't really see much of a problem with it. Sure, I can understand the idea that, hey, Wargaming promised that they wouldn't sell higher than tier 8 ships in the premium store. But I don't think it matters much, because tier 9 is not the highest tier, like I explained earlier, and the ship just isn't very powerful. Now, Kelleran did bring up a good point yesterday on the podcast, and he asked, what if they sold the Missouri? Would I be okay with that, in the premium store that is? And honestly, I'm kind of torn. On the one hand, I would say absolutely yes, because I think people should have access to that ship. I can understand why some people have put the historical significance in that ship, and I think those people should be able to get the ship again, and if it takes the premium store, I think that's just fine. Now, on the other hand, the Missouri is, I think, too strong, and because of that, her being limited is probably better for the game. However, it does bother me when Wargaming does balance, in quotes, in this kind of way, because it's not really balancing the ship, is it? It just tries to hide the problem. But I don't know the solution to that. So, I think it's fine if Wargaming tries this. I mean, they said it themselves that in their, that they're trying out this to see how it would work out. And I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. I just hope they won't be selling tier 10 ships in the future. Now, that I would have pretty big problems with. Now, I can understand that people would like to be able to hold Wargaming to their word. But I also think it's not a bad thing that Wargaming is trying out new things and is willing to see how the player base reacts and how it would work out. Because that's how we got submarines, right? So, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But there is one issue, actually, that I can understand. And that's if a new player comes into the game without really knowing how to play the game well, and they buy this tier 9 premium battleship. They might get into games and ruin other people's games like that, right? Because they just don't know how to play. And I can see that problem. But in the podcast I asked the following question, and I'd like to ask this of you guys too. If Wargaming made it so that you had to own a tier 9 ship before you were able to buy this, would you still have a problem with it? Answer below in the comments. On the second topic of the $150 package, I don't see why people care. I mean, if you go to a liquor store, do you care that they sell a $500 bottle of wine? I don't see why you would. Isn't it great that it's an option to people who can afford that and would like to? I mean, it's not like if you buy that package that you get an advantage over other players, right? Even to me, actually, the $80 price seems outrageous, but people seem to be fine with it, and I think it's okay for people to have that option. By the way, did you know that there's some evidence to indicate that if you have the same wine but at a more expensive price point, it tastes better to you than if you had the same wine at a cheaper price point? Interesting how the human mind works. By the way, that's an interesting ad. Thanks, Google. Also, don't go foolishly thinking that, hey, you know, all those things Aerroon said, sure, that's fine, but look at the game he had. No, that's not how it works, okay? I picked the best game. In fact, I think it's the only good game I had with this version of the ship. But then again, you know, take everything I say with a grain of salt, I might simply be wrong. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would like to thank the patrons on Patreon. Thank you very much for your continued support, Duncan, and I hope I'll see you guys next time.